I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 9, and today I set up the Mekanism area, aka the Backrooms, aka the Eternal Day area, and we set up Fissile Fuel. But it's not normal Fissile Fuel production. No. We get modular with it. Today is World Download Day. That's right, episode 30. We have now hit 30 episodes and have a ton of hours in this pack. So if you're a supporter now of any tier, whether that is on Patreon, over on Twitch, over on Discord, or even here on YouTube, be sure to get your world download all linked over on the Discord. You can find that in the world's download channel as soon as you have all of your account stuff linked up in your user settings. So be sure to check that out. And well, let's get on with today's episode. So the last couple of episodes, we have really dabbled a lot in magic, and I think today we should jump back into some more tech and get into more Mekanism and start to further our technology. Now, in order to do this, I asked you guys a while back, I was like, is there any dimension in this pack that has Eternal Day? And you guys told me, yes, indeed there is. And it is the Blue Skies mod that actually allows this to be possible. Now, I don't really have any intentions of getting into the Blue Skies mod, as it is sort of its own progression, and we chose the Twilight Forest route over the Blue Skies route. But I will say, it doesn't mean we can't use the dimension. Now, there are a lot of mods in this pack that can actually utilize the Eternal Day in this dimension. Power being one fantastic thing, but also, another thing that gains a huge benefit from it is Mekanism. Mekanism has a lot of things, such as the boilers and stuff, that do get a massive boost if we just simply put something in a dimension that is Eternal Day. And this is also going to be helpful for later game with our fission reactors, so that way we can process some of our waste inside the solar neutron activator. This does need Eternal Day. Well, it doesn't need it, but it works better if it is Eternal Day, because whenever it's night, this doesn't run and things start to build up. So I would prefer to have it Eternal Day. So notice the sun is setting, and this right here, this is a structure that you can find throughout the world, and it kind of has randomized portals. You'll find these turquoise ones, and you'll also find the lunar ones. Now you'll notice it's already activated because I tested this out. I went ahead and spent some emeralds on a lighter from this guy, which is probably sleeping. Bed is occupied. Can you get out of the bed, please? There we go. So I guess I bought a lighter, a zeal lighter off of this guy, which you'll find a gatekeeper in these little structures. So you might have to wander around a bit to find a structure like this, and then to find one that also has the turquoise stone. Once you light this, this is going to lead you into the ever bright dimension. And that is where we're going to spend a lot of our time, because Mekanism is very time consuming. Notice it was night there and it is Eternal Day here. So some things I want to test. If a solar panel, I will assume, if a solar panel works in this dimension, then I am going to assume, oh my gosh, flight is disabled in this dimension though. That is going to be kind of a problem. Not too bad though. But yes, flight is apparently disabled here, but I want to test this out. If I put this solar power, it is working. So we do have solar power. So hopefully Mekanism will also work in this dimension. Another problem that is kind of a pain is our tools don't really work so well in this dimension, which there's not a great way around that either, unfortunately. So for example, if I put down some cobblestone and I try to break it with my pickaxe that normally insta-breaks things, it's not insta-breaking. So yes, something to keep in mind as we decide to use this dimension. It does have its perks, and the only way we could get a tool that breaks things a lot better in here would be, well, to either, I think, go with the Mekanism tool, which might honestly work, or to use a tool from this dimension. I think maybe going the Mekanism tool route, though, might be the best. So let's take a look at this. This is the atomic disassembler, and all I have to do is craft this up, and let's see if this works. Now, this is going to have some modes to it. And if I go ahead and I hold down shift and scroll wheel, I can go to the fastest mode, or the fast mode that you see right here. It's slow and fast. So let's see, will this work? Yes, okay. So there's our tool problem completely solved. That's good. Now, another thing to note is we won't always spawn in the middle of an ocean, but this is actually kind of nice that we do, because my goal is to actually build sort of a factory that doesn't even look like we are technically in the middle of the ocean. This we will disregard because I'm going to go out somewhere here in the water, and we are going to place ourselves a way of getting here through waystones. Oh yeah, I know I mentioned this towards the end of last episode, and I wanted to mention this here at the beginning of this one. Up to this point, I have been only making enough resources to make 1 block of all the mod star. However, there's a lot more needed than that. We actually need 2 blocks total, so eventually we're going to have to figure that all out. But it shouldn't be too difficult to account for that, since most of these things are pretty simple to get together. So here's the work in progress. Ultimately, I have some nice platforms here and a starting area. I think this might be big enough, at least on this particular side, to have reactors set up, a fissile fuel setting or setup area. Also, I have a spot here and a spot here for 2 different evaporators that we'll be able to use. And then also maybe more reactor stuff, depending on how we go about setting up all of that. The important part though, is definitely getting fissile fuel automated. And that's really what I want to get done today. But that also means I need a working construction zone, as you see behind me. I need an area to place all of this. So now without further ado, let me show you the build. This is going to be where we do all of our mechanism stuff. And so this will eventually turn blue, which I really like the color of the actual corroded copper, but these massive areas, I still left the top open because, right, we need access to the sun. So these side bits here still have access to the sun, which is going to allow us to still use them. So one of the first things that I actually want to get started is, believe it or not, the actual evaporation chambers. Now, the reason I need to set up these evaporators is because we need to get ourselves some lithium. Now, lithium is very, very important. If we take a look here, lithium is what is required to make the induction cells and make induction casings and all that fun stuff that we're going to get into for mass power storage, which is, I think, going to be essential as we start to progress further on, especially into Mekanism. But we need to get this set up because it takes a little bit of time to sort of run. And to do this, we're going to go ahead and get ourselves the thermal evaporation multi-block set up. And this is kind of an introduction into multi-blocks from Mekanism. Now, this one can be kind of confusing because it does sort of have a format that you need to kind of follow. And that is the 2x2 that it is, set up in, which is kind of odd. Like a 2x2, yeah, it seems a little bit odd. But all we have to do to get this to work is place down blocks in this particular configuration that you see right here. Let me go ahead and get another block here, just like this. And so what we'll end up with is this 2 block high with another set on top. So 3 blocks tall here with some corners left off. And the reason I want to leave the corners off is for these advanced solar panels. So I should be able to, let's see, pop onto the side here because we don't have flight in this dimension. It's a little harder, but we need to place down some solar panels. So I'm going to place down some solar panels just like that onto the sides. And this will help heat up and give some thermal heat into the actual evaporation chamber. Now you can heat this up in other methods that we'll probably get into later, but for right now, this is more than enough. Now on the back here, right in the center, I'm actually going to leave this valve or leave this space for a valve. And then we'll have a valve in the front here. And in the middle of the block is where I'm going to put our controller. And this should complete the multi-block. And so now we have a heat value that is built up, and this is just going to passively run from there being solar panels on top. And I need to do the exact same thing on the other side. Perfect. Now with both of these running, we are ready to produce lithium from water. That's right. This will just passively run from water. So we just need to have a sink connected to start our production of brine, which we can do over here. I'm going to place this down, and then I'm actually going to craft up from Mekanism a pipe that we are going to send water from. So let's go ahead and just create some ultimate pipes here. We're also going to need some pipes to send the fluid over here. And so this is how we're going to do this. And then I'll just use my configuration tool to send water into this. And then we can actually see the brine filling up. Now we need to pull the brine from the back here, and we need to send that into the input, which I can use from the back, which I am going to input on this particular one from the back. And we just need to run some cables underwater. So just like that, I now have the pipes set up underneath the floor, and all I have to do is connect this in. and then do the same thing where we set this to pull. And that is going to send the brine into this machine. And now we can start to see the brine being turned directly into liquid lithium. Now, this is where we need to take that liquid lithium and we need to put it through a couple of machines. The first one being a rotary condensator. And then we need to send what that creates into a chemical crystallizer, and that will ultimately create our lithium dust for us. Now, on the rotary condensator, I did have to toggle the operation to decondensating mode. And then without even configuring anything other than clicking that one button, it's automatically sending the lithium over here. And then that is going to produce our first lithium dust. And then I think all I'm going to end up doing is probably just setting up a drawer over here. So let's do a drawer for right now, because I just want it to fill an inventory with this stuff. So functional storage, and we'll take any sort of drawer. Not a big deal. Actually, this one has stuff in it. Let's craft a drawer. Goodness, you gotta love when like I'm trying to craft some stuff up and I just don't have it. That always happens. So there we go, just an oak drawer. I think, yeah, we just want to choose this. And then we should be able to automatically have the items output. Now, for right now, the items are set to output to the right, but we're going to set it to output to that side and then just turn on the auto output. And there we go. We just need to get these some power. So some nodes, and we don't even really need to upgrade these, I don't think. Just letting them run should be more than fine. And we can use the nodes from the power mod because they're just so flat and they work great. So just like that. Ready to go. Now this is truly about as simple as it gets. We need a buildup of lithium. So letting this sort of run while we work on other things is a great way to do that. And I don't think we need a bunch of lithium. It's really used for these induction cell components and used for our storage later on. And by that time we are going to have plenty of it. Now let's get into fissile fuel, and I want to try my best to break this down as simple as possible. It is a lot of machines technically to set this up. And this is really going to determine how quickly you can actually make antimatter, because the faster that you can produce fissile fuel, the higher the burn rate you can ultimately run. And well, that means, like I said, more antimatter, which is really, really good. But to break this down as simple as possible, in reality, all fissile fuel is the combination of sulfur, which we are going to get from coal. So our fundamental idea is coal, we need a lot of, sulfur, we need a lot of, which comes from the coal, and then we're going to need a lot of uranium. That is going to be sort of the basic items that we actually feed to this, that we need a lot of in order to produce more, and usually ends up being our bottleneck. And then second in line to that is always going to be your hydrogen and your oxygen. So those are going to be the things that we're going to combine into this fissile fuel basically together using multiple different machines. And then of course, science, science rules, right? And we're going to be combining all of these things together to produce this fissile fuel. Now I have a modular design that I want to use, and this is going to require a lot of quantum entangle porters. And that sounds very, very crazy, but these things right here, if I place this down, I can give this a name and an ID, and I can assign something going into this based on that ID. And the cool part is this can automatically send things out of it. It can't send items automatically out of it, but it can, well, actually it can send items out of it, but just not into it. You can't pull things into it, but you can send, for example, fluids and gases and everything through this single block. And this is what's going to allow us to build a modular setup. So I can send oxygen into this. I can send pretty much anything, right? I can send oxygen. I can send, if I generate sulfuric dioxide, I can send that into it and then send that to whatever machine needs it, and so on and so forth. So this is going to be the fundamental part of this. And the cool part is it also has configurations that I can just simply copy. And this is going to be a big part of this. So in Mekanism, we have a configuration card. And to be able to not go crazy while setting these machines up, this thing is going to be your best friend. Now, because we have sulfur seeds and uranium seeds, this process is actually kind of compressed down because we gotta get to skip sort of one machine hold process, which does include a lot of other machines because we'll need oxygen and water. So it sort of saves some space. Now, we are going to need to get our refined storage here in order to get these items in, but we'll do that last. Let's first, though, think about how we're going to set all of this up and sort of lay out our base. Now, I want to set this up in categories. Our first category is going to be making sulfuric acid. And this typically requires 5 machines, but in our case, we're going to be only using 4, really. So I have my machines laid down in place, and keep in mind, this is to essentially make sulfuric acid. The way this is going to work is we have a chemical oxidizer that is going to receive the sulfur dust, and thankfully we can just get that from our seeds. Sulfur dust is then going to go into this machine. It will be processed into sulfur dioxide, which means in this machine, I need to name this sulfur dioxide. So this is how we can actually label our machines. Now, this has an input and output, and so we can take the input from this machine, send it into here, and then I can then send that into the chemical injector. So the cool thing, the reason why we want to do this is because we can just, if we need more of this, we can just place another machine directly on top and another quantum entangle porter on top of it. And if this machine isn't the bottleneck and it's just this, then we don't have to add another machine here. This will, because it's linked to another one, these are basically ways of accessing things wirelessly. It'll allow us to simply send everything directly into this one machine. And then we can just use the configuration card on them. So it's really easy to copy settings, and that includes selecting what it is now set to. So back to what we're actually making. So the sulfur dioxide then goes into this chemical infuser, and then this gets combined with oxygen, which is going to be in the back. So let's go ahead and make our oxygen channel, right? So we have, if I spell it right, would be the first time I spelled oxygen wrong. So we have our oxygen channel, and we'll go ahead and now set that. Now we haven't set up oxygen yet, but we'll have oxygen and hydrogen on its own separate setup that will end up going into this. And so that'll end up going into this machine. Now we do have to configure these machines at least once. And so that means going in here and making sure we're selecting gases and configuring the selection for gases correctly first. And that is a bit time consuming, but once you have it done once, you'll never have to do it again. All right, so now that it goes into this chemical infuser with that oxygen, we're producing sulfur trioxide. So the sulfur trioxide can then have its own channel here now. So now that's sulfur trioxide. Then that sulfur trioxide is going to go into this chemical infuser, and that's going to need water vapor. So let's create a water vapor channel like so. And now we have our water vapor in here. And then this is going to produce sulfuric acid, which is our final product that we're trying to make. And, all together is sulfuric acid, which will end up in here. And then we can carry this somewhere else. Now, this right here, this is kind of out of the left field, right? What do we do with this? This is receiving water. So this is actually what's making the water vapor. So we can go in here and just set this to the water vapor channel, and that is going to link to this one. Instead of using a pipe, this might be a better option, even though it's more expensive than a pipe. It'll just be easier to configure because we don't have to break anything or move anything. We just place the machine, copy the settings, and paste the settings, and we're good to go. And this is how I want to set up a modular style of fissile fuel production. Now, I know I can talk out almost a 5-page essay on how to set this all up, but the other settings is going to be producing the fissile fuel itself. And then we also need a simple setup for making uranium oxide. This, honestly, what I just showed you is the hardest part of the entire setup. I also went ahead and set up a water quantum entangle porter. That way we can just use a water quantum entangle porter for all of our other quantum entangle porters, entangle porter emporium. All right, so yes, just another quantum entangle porter goes here. And I'm just going to use this to feed water directly into this machine. And I want to keep them on the sides because if there is a way that I can make sure this is stackable, I want to make sure of it. Now, as far as generating oxygen and hydrogen, I now have 2 electrolytic separators setting back here. It's receiving water from the back, hydrogen goes into the left, and then oxygen goes into the right. And as soon as I get this powered, this will start running and get our machines upgraded. Everything should flow smoothly. I even have all of these now set up to configure properly. So you have to select the selection here as far as gases or fluids. And keep in mind, you can also move this window around if something is in the way, if it's easier for you to do. And so once I have all of this set up, which I've already gotten done, it can be a little tedious because you do have to make sure to go in here. And for example, if you're sending gases, from one machine to another, you're going to want to make sure that eject is set on. So that way when it goes in here, it'll eject into the next machine. And then this machine needs to have eject on. So it sends into this machine. And then this needs to have eject on. So it can send into this one, and so on and so forth. Now for making uranium oxide, simply we need to send in uranium into an enrichment chamber. That will then turn it into 2 yellow cake uranium, which we can actually send items. Pretty much everything can be sent through an entangle porter, but we can send items through the entangle porter. So that will end up going in here, and we'll have it under item mode. And so we'll just have input and then output automatically over to the next machine. And then the oxidizer will then create uranium oxide. And then that will be able to be sent over to our fissile fuel, where we then will be able to combine our sulfuric acid along with fluorite, which is another thing we're going to actually need a lot of. I almost forgot about fluorite. And then we pretty much are producing fissile fuel. Now to take all of these things and combine them together, we're going to take right here our sulfuric acid. So this is going to be sent into a chemical dissolution chamber. Now in the back, we need to send this some fluorite, which is another item that we're going to need to constantly fill this. Now that item is then going to be put into the chemical dissolution chamber. And then this is going to produce hydrofluoric acid. That acid will then go into this quantum entangle porter, which is named hydrofluoric acid. That will then be sent into the chemical infuser. Now that will be infused with uranium oxide, which we're getting from over here. And the uranium oxide is this back here. And so we can then take that setup, and that will then combine those two things together, and that will have us uranium hexafluoride. It's a long word. And then that's going to go into the isotropic centrifuge, which is then going to be turned into the final product, which is fissile fuel. Now, to just simply get the things hooked up to it. Now, I think as far as item input goes, I'm actually going to have 3 separate quantum entangle porters that we just set up back at the base. And I'm just going to hook some importers with some crafting upgrades onto those things. And then we can just put a quantum entangle porter here as well. And so this whole thing essentially will be uber modular. That's right. So yes, if we want to expand on any of this, it's just a matter of just putting it on top of the other machine and copying the settings. Now for the fun part, setting this up at the base. And so what I'm going to do is place all of my crafter cards in here, because all of these are going to be crafted from essence. And we can always expand upon our essence if need be for these particular things. But first things first, this is going to be sulfur dust. So I'll send the sulfur dust in. And then this one is going to be fluorite, which by the way has the Gregstar texture. And then over here, we're going to be sending the uranium ingots. So all of this is pretty nice. And then I need to go into the back of the machine, or into the quantum entangle porters for each one. And we need to just basically say, hey, auto input into here. And you're going to start to see the items now filling up, because they can now go into the machine. And so we now have sulfur, fluorite, and then this should also be sending to the other machines by auto outputting back over in the other dimension. So now that I'm back in the dimension, this is all starting to kick off, and we should start seeing some things work. As soon as we give all of these machines a source of power, they should all technically start firing up, and we'll start running. And we'll start supplying everything, and eventually it should make its way all the way over here if I didn't break anything, and should start producing some fissile fuel eventually. So there we go. These back two I didn't configure correctly, so I got them all set up, and yes, we're now producing fissile fuel, and you can see the fissile fuel starting to build up. Oh, this is powerful. Now all we have to do with all of this noise is just upgrade the machines. So once we have all of these machines max upgraded, they're really going to start to utilize that 20K buffer there on some of them. But yes, this whole setup should be expandable by simply taking a machine and stacking it on top of the other one. And now we essentially have a really nice setup for fissile fuel production. Now this is when the min-maxing really starts, and that is honestly the final boss of Mekanism, is just making sure that all of your ratios are kind of working together to produce as much fissile fuel as you really want. Now something to note, do not forget to put your gas burning upgrades inside of this chemical dissolution chamber. This is going to be kind of important to do, and is really nice for all of the chemical dissolution chambers. Now, of course, I can't forget to actually show off the ability to use this modularly. Now, at the moment, we are sort of going to run out of sulfuric acid, and we're also not going to be producing this fast enough. So with all of these up and running, we'll notice that this isn't exactly filled up by any means. And so we can't really scale this up until we have all of this other stuff running. So to be able to scale up and start to scale up the full production of this, by the way, which also we need to get an actual point on this, because with the amount of speed upgrades, it's too much. But we're going to notice that this is going to run out of sulfuric acid. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to place down our chemical oxidizer. There's one there, and there's one there. And then we just need to take the quantum entangle porters and place one there and one here. And then we'll need another quantum entangle porter, right? Now, I could get away with not using so many quantum entangle porters if I really wanted to. I could use pipes here, but like I said, I want to avoid pipes if at all possible. Let's go ahead and grab another one. And these are so easy to craft at this point that it makes no sense not doing this. So let's go ahead and copy this card. And I don't know if it automatically copies what it has set in it, unfortunately, but I can go ahead and immediately get these cards copying over the settings to the machine, so that way all of the stuff gets sent where it needs to go. Okay, it does look like it does copy over what it is currently set to. So we have the sulfur dust in there, and these are actually all sending. Perfect. Now it is going to run out of power immediately, and we put some power up on this, and then we'll get our energy and our speed upgrades on this. And there we go. That is a perfect example of how this works modularly. It's pretty darn cool. And so now this machine should be receiving a bunch more sulfuric acid, or sorry, sulfur dioxide from this machine. Now, after upgrading the power on the chemical infuser and our isotropic centrifuge over here, I will now see that we are keeping up with the hydrofluoric acid, but we are now bottlenecked on the amount of uranium. So we are going to need to upgrade this, and we can do this in two ways. We can upgrade the base machine to produce more uranium, but I don't think that's going to speed this process up, because this is honestly handling it just fine, the amount that it's receiving. So I think just having more chemical infusers and simply upgrading our enrichment chamber to a higher tier would be a better option. So we'll just need more chemical infusers, or chemical oxidizers, excuse me. Now, in reality, the only true way we're going to be able to see roughly what our burn rate is by actually having a fission reactor up and running. But we don't have that just yet, but we will be getting it very, very soon. So we see the fissile fuel being produced. We have a lot of it being produced here. And then right here, we have our oxidizers. I added 2 more, and then I just upgraded this to the next tier. And if I just want to go even further, I can just continue to upgrade this even more, and we'll end up with more and more. But I noticed this is still the major bottleneck, whereas this currently is not. So we do not have a problem making hydrofluoric. So I think adding even more of these would definitely make it so we don't have a bottleneck, but I still don't yet know currently where we're at as far as the actual amount of fissile fuel we are producing goes. Once I know how much we're actually making, I can then make that determination and fully understand what our actual burn rate is and what I want to be at. And that is where the true magic of Mekanism resides. So now that I have that, I can go ahead and fill this hole. So let's go ahead and grab our concrete. By the way, I can make concrete so fast now because of the mystical agriculture ability to create concrete and actually not need you to place it in water. Oh, it's so nice because of that. But this is so simplistic. This is probably the cleanest setup I've ever done. Now, volcano block, I did a pretty nice setup, but this one is even more clean than I did then. So this one is fantastic, utilizing all of the quantum entangle porters. It's absolutely beautiful. Honestly, I'm a little proud of myself. Now, guys, with that, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hopefully you learned something new, and hopefully you got something out of this. I know that fissile fuel production can be kind of complicated, so if you want to look at this in more detail, be sure to download the world if you're a supporter of any tier, like I mentioned at the beginning of today's episode. So thank you guys so much for supporting, those of you who do support. And like I said, if you did enjoy, click that subscribe button, comment down below. Is there another way that you would have possibly done this? Keeping in mind that we can still use the cut paste gadget, which is a new gadget from Direwolf, to actually move all of these things into a more compact area now that we have them sort of set up. Oh, there's just so many possibilities. I absolutely love it. Guys, it is now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to have to go out to Thorin Stark. Thank you so much for your amazing support, by the way, over on the Discord, becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. Also, be sure to get your world download and try out this awesome contraption thing that we have going on back here, aka Fizzle Fuel. Guys, it's been a blast, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye.